Have you ever tried to wrap your head around something like the U.S. Federal Reserve System?
Yeah.
It just feels so huge, right? Almost mythical. Controlling so much, but staying so mysterious.
It definitely has that aura.
Well, today, that's exactly what we're doing, taking a deep dive into it. Our mission, really, is to use our source material, the U.S. Federal Reserve, explain the creature from Jekyll Island, to sort of pull back the curtain.
Understand what it really is.
Exactly, and explore its impact. And interestingly, we're going to use an idea from the philosopher Epictetus about appearances. Sounds a bit abstract, maybe.
A little, perhaps.
But it's key, apparently, to understanding what our source says about the Fed.
Indeed. Epictetus, yeah, he was good at cutting through illusions. He talked about appearances being of four kinds. The one that really hits home here, the one our source claims is the basic truth about the Fed, is the fourth kind.
Which is?
Things that are not and yet appear to be. It points to a fundamental deception. And this leads to a pretty bold conclusion in the material.
Yeah.
The Fed doesn't just need an audit. It needs to be abolished.
Abolished. That's strong.
It is. The argument is it's doing exactly what it was designed for, which the source flat out calls a scam. We'll dig into the first four reasons given for abolition today. That it can't achieve its stated goals, it's a cartel acting against the public interest, it's an instrument of usury, and it creates what the source labels are most unfair tax.
Okay, so if the Fed is not, and yet appears to be, how did that start? Where did this deception begin? We need to go back right to 1910. That's the origin point. November 1910, think about this. A super secret meeting on a private island, Jekyll Island, off the Georgia coast.
Sounds like a spy novel.
It really does. The secrecy was intense. Everything was done to keep it under wraps. It wasn't just private. It felt like a, well, conspiracy of silence, as you put it.
How secret are we talking? Extraordinary levels. People arrived one by one. They pretended not to know each other if they bumped into each other, didn't dine together initially. They even used code names like Wilbur and Orville for two of them.
Like the Wright brothers.
Yeah, Davison and Vanderlip, to keep the servants in the dark. One guy brought a shotgun, had a whole duck hunting story ready.
But he wasn't a hunter.
Apparently never fired a gun in his life.
Mm-hmm.
The why is critical. They were terrified of the public finding out. If the press got wind of who was there, what they were planning...
Whole thing would collapse before it started.
Exactly. The purpose would have been destroyed.
And looking at who was there, it makes the secrecy make a lot more sense. These weren't just average bankers.
Not at all. We're talking serious power players.
Yeah.
Senator Nelson Aldrich, Republican whip, head of the National Monetary Commission, tied to J.P. Morgan, father-in-law to a Rockefeller.
Heavy hitters.
Absolutely. Abraham Piatt Andrew from the Treasury. Then top guys from the big New York banks, National City, First National, Vanderlip, Davison, Norton, Benjamin Strong, also a Morgan associate who later became the first head of the Fed.
Okay.
And maybe most importantly, Paul Warburg. He represented Rothschild interests, partner in Kuhn Loeb. His brother Max ran a huge German bank. The source calls him the real Daddy Warbucks.
Good grief. That's quite the guest list.
It's staggering, really. These 7 men, together they represented something like 1/4 of the entire world's wealth at that time.
1/4. Just 7 men.
Astonishing, isn't it? The power concentrated in that one room, planning in secret.
So that really brings us back to the question, why that much secrecy? For banking reform, what were they actually hiding? How does it connect to this is not and yet appears to be idea?
Well, Frank Vanderlip himself spilled the beans later. He basically said if the public knew that their group, the exact money trust that politicians were promising voters they'd break up, had written the banking bill.
It would have been dead on arrival in Congress.
No chance. This source uses a great metaphor. This was like having the fox build the henhouse and install the security system.
Okay, I see. So it wasn't about protecting the public or stabilizing things.
The argument is it was about designing a system, secretly, for their own benefit. A profound deception from day one.
That's a really stark claim. So the source is saying this wasn't about fixing problems, but about consolidating power, moving away from competition, more towards monopolies and cartels, like Rockefeller's idea that competition is a sin.
The evidence presented in the book points squarely that way. I mean, what is a cartel? In simple terms, it's a bunch of supposedly independent businesses getting together to, limit or kill off competition.
Price fixing, dividing markets.
That sort of thing. Exactly. Sharing patents, maybe. The result, they boost their profits, secure their position, and the public ends up paying more. That's the bottom line.
And the Fed, as designed on Jekyll Island, was that.
Precisely that, according to the source, a banking cartel. But, and this is the crucial is not and yet appears to be part. It was sold to the public as this impartial government body,
Yeah.
protecting the people, stabilizing the economy.
The appearance versus the reality.
Textbook case.
And then the source says this secret cartel actually partnered up with the government. That sounds counterintuitive. What's the deal for each side?
Now we get to the mandrake mechanism. That's the source's term for how the Fed literally creates money.
Mandrake mechanism.
Okay, so the government always needs money, right? Often way more than taxes bring in. They can issue bonds, IOUs, and the public lends them money.
Standard practice.
But for the really big bucks, the huge spending, they go to the Fed. And here's the magic trick, like Mandrake the magician waving his cape.
Mm-hmm.
The Fed official just writes a check to the Treasury, billions.
Writes a check. From where?
Out of nothing. It's not drawing on existing funds. It's new credit created right then and there, essentially as debt. So the government's payoff is obvious. Huge amounts of cash instantly, without needing to ask taxpayers directly for more money through, say, unpopular tax hikes.
Okay, the government gets instant money created out of nothing. How does that help the banks, the cartel? Where's their profit in this magic show?
Right. Well, here's the thing about fractional reserve banking. That initial money created for the government, it doesn't just stop there. When the government deposits that check, say, in a commercial bank.
Like paying a government worker who deposits their check.
Exactly. The bank, following Fed rules, only needs to keep a fraction in reserve, let's say 10%.
Okay.
So for every $100 deposited, that bank can then lend out $90. But that $90 loan gets deposited somewhere else, and that bank keeps 10%, $9, and lends out $81.
And it keeps going, multiplying down the line.
Precisely. The source explains how that initial $100 deposit can eventually lead to banks lending out up to $900 more money.
Where does that extra $900 come from?
It also springs into existence when the loan is made. It didn't exist before.
Okay.
It's created as credit. So the banks pay off, crystal clear. They lend out all this created credit, this nothing money, and they collect interest on it, perpetually.
Interest on nothing.
As the source puts it, not too shabby interest on nothing.
So, okay, we've got this new money flowing into the system, a lot of it created as credit by banks. What does that actually do to us, to you, the listener, and your money?
Yeah.
What are the real-world consequences?
Well, every time new money is created like that, out of thin air and pushed into the economy, it dilutes the value of all the dollars already out there.
Dilutes.
Yeah, think of it like pouring water into a pot of soup. You don't have more soup ingredients, right? Just thinner soup.
Okay, that's a good analogy.
That process is what we experience as inflation. It's not really that prices are going up across the board.
It's that the dollar is buying less.
Yeah.
Its value is going down.
Exactly. The purchasing power decreases. Contrast that with, say, gold. A 1-ounce gold coin in ancient Rome could buy you a nice toga, belt, sandals. Today, that same ounce of gold buys you a nice suit, belt, and shoes.
So real money holds its value over time.
Pretty much. But our fiat money, these Federal Reserve notes, they aren't backed by anything physical, just by government decree. And because more and more can be created, their value steadily drops.
Okay, so if our purchasing power is lost, it has to go somewhere, right? Who's gaining it?
Good question. The value is captured by whoever gets to use the new money first, while it still holds its older, higher value. Those at the nozzle, so to speak.
Like the government spending it immediately.
Yep. The government spends it first, then maybe government contractors, people getting grants, and of course the banks who are lending out this newly created credit.
What about people who borrow the money? Don't they benefit from paying back loans with cheaper dollars later on?
They might seem to superficially during inflation, but remember, they're paying interest, often substantial interest, on money that the bank created out of, well, nothing. At the end of the day, the real winners, the ones capturing that lost purchasing power from the public. It's the two partners in this mechanism, the government and the banking cartel.
So inflation is basically a tax.
A hidden tax.
Yeah.
An inescapable one, not levied by Congress, but built right into the system's design.
Now let's circle back to the Fed's stated purpose. Is it actually doing what it claims, stabilizing the economy?
Well, if you look at the results, the report card presented by the source, it paints a pretty bleak picture. It highlights that whole is not and yet appears to be thing again.
What's on the report card?
Since the Fed was created, we've had the crash of 21, the crash of 29, the Great Depression, then numerous recessions, 53, 57, 69, 75, 81, Black Monday in 87.
Doesn't sound very stable.
Not really. Plus, soaring corporate and personal debt, record bankruptcies, major bank failures, the national debt interest eating up half of all taxes, loss of heavy industry, trade deficits, foreign ownership of U.S. assets. The source argues it's clearly failed its stated objectives.
So if those weren't the real goals, what were? You said the goals of a cartel.
Exactly. Enhance profits, stabilize their market position, shut down competition. Those are the true objectives, according to this analysis.
Okay, so what was objective number one that it actually achieved?
First objective, stop the power drain from New York. As the U.S. grew, new banks popped up everywhere, capital spread out, challenging the dominance of the big New York banks.
I have to stop that.
It helped reverse that trend. William Greider wrote about this in Secrets of the Temple. He said the 1913 reforms actually helped preserve the status quo. Wall Street kept its dominance, maybe even enhanced it. So on that hidden objective, the Fed gets an A.
Okay, that's objective one. What was the second hidden goal?
Second, reverse the trend of private capital formation, meaning stop businesses from funding themselves out of their own savings.
I have to do that.
By creating that flexible currency money out of nothing. This allowed them to push interest rates down artificially low, made it super tempting for businesses and individuals to borrow from banks instead of saving up.
Ah, I see. And when the economy inevitably hits a downturn.
Borrowers default. And the banks, they end up owning the real stuff. The houses, the cars, the factories pledged as collateral. More wealth flows to the cartel. Another A for the Fed on achieving that goal.
And the third true objective, you said it was maybe the most cynical.
Yeah. Number 3, make sure the taxpayers cover the losses. This is what the source calls Operation Bailout.
Bailouts. We hear that word a lot.
Right. When big banks or their major borrowers, big corporations, even countries get into trouble, the government steps in. Congress votes money, taxpayer money, to guarantee loans or just pay them off. Why? To keep the system going, keep the interest flowing to the banks.
Can you give examples?
The source lists plenty. Penn Central Railroad, Lockheed, New York City itself, Chrysler, Continental Illinois Bank, even third world countries getting bailed out via the IMF and World Bank using funds derived largely from us taxpayers. So, yeah. Objective 3, another A.
That leads into another concept you mentioned earlier, usury. How does the source define that in this context with this fiat money?
It takes a pretty radical view. Traditionally, usury meant charging excessive interest. But the source argues that with fiat money, money created by decree, not backed by anything real, any interest charged on it could be considered usury.
Any interest at all? Why?
Because nobody actually earned or saved or sacrificed anything to create that principal amount. It was just magicked into existence as credit by the bank. Think about buying a house. Say, a $100,000 house, 20% down, 30-year loan at 10%. The source calculates you'd pay over $72,000 in interest to the bank. Compare that to maybe $70,000 for all the labor and materials that actually went into building the house.
So the bank, which created the money digitally, makes more than the builders and suppliers combined.
That's the point being made. Thomas Edison apparently commented on this, saying, people who don't lift a shovel or provide a pound of material end up collecting more than those who do all the work. It's described as this huge, wide river of wealth flowing into the banking cartel, all from interest on nothing.
So this massive river of wealth,
Yeah.
Where does it all go? Is it just funding luxury lifestyles? Or is there something else?
Well, sure, some goes to yachts and mansions. But according to the source, once you have immense wealth, the real game becomes power.
Power over what?
Power over people. This money is used to gain influence or outright control over society's power centers. Think politicians, media outlets, universities, unions, big foundations, multinational corporations, you name it.
Buying influence.
Essentially. And it extends globally, too. The source argues that IMF and World Bank loans, again funded by us, often go to corrupt regimes in developing nations. Not to help the people, but to strengthen the government's control, making those nations dependent clients of the banking system.
So they're effectively buying nations.
That's the claim. And simultaneously, this process can weaken countries like the U.S., making people more likely to accept, say, global governance structures during crises. It's all about leveraging that money from nothing for global control.
Wow. Okay, we have certainly covered a lot today.
Yeah.
Feels like we've gone from its very hidden beginnings on Jekyll Island right through to its impact on our wallets and even global power. We've really tried to unpack the source's argument about the Fed's true nature, this idea of a powerful cartel working with government, collecting hidden taxes via inflation, manipulating things for power, all while appearing to be a public servant.
That appearance versus reality again, Epictetus's fourth kind, is not and yet appears to be.
Perfectly sums it up.
And that leads right into the final, really provocative idea from the source material. The only real solution is to slay the creature, meaning Congress, pushed by people who understand this, needs to take away the Fed's power to create money out of nothing, to basically turn this massive appearance of the fourth kind back into a disappearance of the first kind, turn the illusion back into reality by dismantling it.
That is definitely a powerful thought to end on.
Right.
If you found this deep dive as eye-opening as we did, please do follow, like, and share it. It really helps get the word out.
Absolutely.
And for more deep dives into fascinating topics, you can follow What Bitcoin Taught Me on Twitter X, Nostr, Beluski Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.